And our top story tonight, one of the most important things the president does is nominate justices to the Supreme Court. The fact that President Trump placed 3 justices on the court in just one term was extraordinary in itself, but it was also transformative since he replaced liberal Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg with conservative Justice Amy Coney Barrett. That changed the ideology of the court somewhat. Well, today's news that President Biden will have an opportunity to replace a liberal justice with another liberal may not seem like much of a change, but there are political implications to all this that magnify its importance enormously. For those details, let's bring in political analyst Karl Rove. Karl, great to see you. Thank you for being here. Let's start with the elephant in the room, and quite frankly, it's our Vice President, Kamala Harris. It's no secret that she's become a liability to the administration. She polls lower than the president himself, who's down in the dumps in the polls. It's a big problem for a White House that has a president who may not run for a second term, who frankly may not make it through this term for all we know, to have a vice president that is so disliked. So is this the perfect place for Kamala Harris to go?
No, for one simple reason. The Senate is 50-50. If the president were to nominate Vice President Kamala Harris, she would not be able to vote on her own nomination, I don't believe. And so the Senate would be deadlocked 50-50 unless some Republicans decided to support her for the Supreme Court, and she wouldn't be in a position to break the tie. And there being no vice president, no replacement for the vice president by statute, the Senate would be deadlocked 50-50. Don't you think?
I mean, I'm thinking of people like Mitt Romney and other moderate Republicans who've gone with the Democrats in the past. Don't you think there are enough of them to break that tie, to get her into the Supreme Court justice position?
Well, maybe for somebody else, but I don't think, look, Senator Harris, when she was in the Senate, was not liked by even her own colleagues on in the Democratic caucus. So there's no great deep well of personal feelings about her among Republicans. There isn't even that among Democrats. Remember, I don't think she gained a single endorsement out of the Senate during her abortive race for the presidency. I happened to have coffee recently with a member of the Senate who served with her, and I asked this mild-mannered person what it was like to work with her, and a half an hour later he finished excoriating her. She's not a pleasant person, and she doesn't have the friendships in the Senate that would cause, in my opinion, for Republicans to break for her if she were to be nominated.
Karl, you're going to hate it, but I'm going to keep pushing on this for a bit, because I'm just looking at what's happened with the president's BBB plan, which he is really hell-bent on getting passed. This would give him a little more room. It would please the progressives enormously to have Kamala Harris go over to the Supreme Court, I think, because they recognize they may be out of it when it comes to economic policy, but they realize that she doesn't stand a chance of becoming the next president, at least now. But they would love to get her in the Supreme Court. It would give Joe Biden more leeway to deal with Joe Manchin in terms of getting something passed that would be acceptable to all. No?
Well, I don't think so. At the end of the day, do the progressives put their faith and confidence in her? No. We've already heard the Justice Democrats come out in favor of Judge Brown Jackson,
yes,
who's on the D.C. Circuit. Leandra Kruger, who's on the California Supreme Court, seems to be a little bit more moderate. But we also have people coming out in favor of, for example, Clyburn of South Carolina is in favor of a federal district court judge, J. Michelle Childs. We have Wilhelmina Wright, another justice. We have a federal district court judge, I believe, from Minnesota. And then what's interesting to me, Stacey Abrams' sister is a federal judge in Georgia, and she's getting some talk. So the liberals have got, if you're a progressive, you've got a lot more options to choose from than just Kamala Harris. And again, I don't see a great reservoir of support among even progressives for her. Remember, look at the people, Pete Buttigieg, Julian Castro, lots of people lasted in the presidential contest far longer than she did because she turned out to be a terrible candidate. She's not a particularly good lawyer. I mean, her tenure as Attorney General of California was not particularly distinguished. She's not a legal beagle brain. I mean, I just don't see it.
All right, so that brings us back, Karl. What do they do with Kamala Harris? Again, this is an administration with a president who's very old to begin with, but who is clearly losing his stuff. And you know, you have a vice president who normally would be the person to take over either in midterm or for a next run at the White House for the next election. What do they do? I mean, there was just this extraordinary thing. Here she is in charge of the border. She can't make it down to the border more than once a year, and yet she's going to Honduras for the inauguration of an anti-Semitic socialist as the president of Honduras. But she can't make it to our own border. I mean, there's just one failure after another with her.
Yeah. Well, look, when she went to the border, she went to El Paso, which is about 400 miles west of where the problem is happening on the lower Rio Grande River. So she couldn't, when she found her way to the border, she couldn't find her way to the right kind of part of the border. Look, I've said and written this before. I do not believe Joe Biden will be the nominee of the Democratic Party in 2024. They're not going to nominate an 82-year-old to run for president. And they're not going to nominate Kamala Harris because she is a dreadful candidate who has been a dreadful vice president and is not getting any better. If anything, she's getting worse. I hear the cackle far too often, and that's her tell that she knows she's in a bad place.
Right.
So, no, there's going to be somebody new and fresh, and they're not going to be trying to get her out of the scene by putting her on the Supreme Court.
By the way, you're a historian for good reason of the history of the presidency of the U.S. Has there ever been a situation like this where neither the president nor the president's vice president could run for a second term?
Well, not really. I mean, you know, we've had some instances where vice presidents have been, you know, have died and therefore not been able to run to succeed their superior. But no, this is
so the
a unique
pivot
moment.
is going to be very difficult to pull off, won't it? I mean, putting somebody in there from the outside, how do they do it?
You mean for the nomination in 2024? Yeah, look, I think it's going to be a wide open game on both sides, particularly the Democratic side. And on the Republican side, if President Trump doesn't seek renomination, but on the Democratic side, I think it's going to be wide open. I don't think Biden is going to run. She may try and run, but she's not going to scare anybody out of the field. And there'll be a lot of new-faced Democrats who say, you know what, our party needs to have somebody who is not intimately tied to the failures of the Biden administration. The President of the United States is in bad shape in the polls today, and absent some major event like a 9/11 or a major foreign policy success, it is highly unlikely that he's going to be in better shape by 2024, and therefore she's not going to be in any better shape.
But Karl Rove, 100% you're certain that Kamala Harris is not going to be nominated to the Supreme Court.
I've also got a bet with a former member of Congress that it's not going to be the person he thought it would be, which was Michelle Obama. So no, Kamala Harris and Michelle Obama, neither one of them on the Supreme Court. You can put it here first.
All right. I'm not a betting man. Otherwise, I'd make a little bet. I'd take odds on that one. But anyway, I still think there's a small chance. It fits politically so well. I just thought it might go down with you. Karl, good to see you, my friend. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, David.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.